We're back with PU Talk number 4. I'll be honest, John, I really look forward to this. I think for a variety of reasons. I think it all comes from questions that I've had from our last talks that I'm kind of excited to talk about and discuss. I know we have these conversations throughout the week, but it's kind of cool to have a certain period of time where we can actually hash some things out and have a discussion on it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's gaining some momentum for sure. If anything, no one else is listening, at least we get to talk about the things we love to and hash some things out between us.
For sure. Anything new going on in the facility? I know we cut our first lettuce from the garden, which is super exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Very indicative of today's talk as well.
Yes, which I feel like that, I don't know about you, I was eating my salad, I'm like, there's a certain air to knowing that you literally cut the lettuce. This lettuce was grown.
Yes.
You put some labor into it. There's pride in knowing that wow, I cut this. Although Marco did the vast majority of the knowledge and brains behind it, but knowing that you actually dug the soil in there is kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't remember where it was, but I once heard somebody famous, and again, I'm not going to be able to point this out, but they talked about the fact that every man should be able to build their own house.
For sure.
Literally.
For sure.
Get their hands dirty, be able to understand what goes into every aspect and detail of their home to appreciate that process, kick it back old school, so on and so forth. And it definitely, there's some truth to that when you look at growing it. Again, I think this has all been very guided and pushed by the expertise of Marco and his green thumb. And I can say that I'm really enjoying the process, albeit very new to it. As far as a garden is concerned, I took a bite of a radish today, and man, I didn't think I liked radishes, but I like them when I grow them.
I've not done the radish yet, but the lettuce and the salad was awesome. Well, let's kind of get into today where we're going with this. I know we talked last week about how we move and how that is and why that is our number one pillar, but I know this week, and I'm really excited for this talk, is we're talking about how we eat. And how that's our number 2 pillar and how important that is. And I'm excited because as many people here know, I feel like you have an extensive knowledge on that and a variety of it through your experiences, but also some of your different trials and errors and things that you've tried. But I'm excited to kind of dive into kind of the psychology behind nutrition and just ultimately how this shapes what we do. So I guess to start, why is how we eat number 2? Why is that our number 2 pillar? And why is it even a pillar in kind of our health and happiness quest that we've been talking about?
Well, to piggyback on last week's conversation, we talked about how we move being number 1 because it was the filter that we most often relate to in our programming and our services, but a very close second being what you eat or how you eat. I would also put a disclaimer out there to say that I almost called this pillar what you ingest, because it goes so much beyond just the food, physically what we're taking in, but it also can go as far as hydration, surely, medication, what we're putting into our body from that standpoint, and even go into the aspects of pollution and toxins, and that's a long rabbit hole and a far cry away from, I think, what we want to focus on today. But the familiarity and the understanding of everybody, general population, general public out there, to know that what we eat, the old adage of we are what we eat, but what we eat having such a large portion of how our health is progressing or declining. There is a definite, not just correlation, but there's a true causation to that. And again, when we talk about these pillars being skills, there is definitely some things that we can do to move forward in developing ourselves in those manners to have a healthier and happier life.
And I think it makes sense in that, we move constantly throughout the day. I mean, from the minute we wake up to the minute we decide to go to bed, we move. And it's the same thing here as well, is that, we eat constantly throughout the day. I mean, it's movement and nutrition that continually allow us to thrive on a daily basis. So to you, and I know you kind of touched on this a second, you said, okay, well, it's even more so in that more of what we ingest. What does how we eat, what does that mean to you? I mean, when you think of that, what are some of the first thoughts that come to mind?
Great question, and I think it can take a lot of different directions depending on the topic that we are referring to. But let's start from the foundation, and I think that we have to, again, you're going to see a lot of themes and a lot of patterns in the way that we talk about each pillar, but just like how we move, we got to start with the quality before we talk about quantity or capacity. So when we talk about quality of food, we have to go into what is, quite frankly, the one thing that seemingly through research and through conversations of the people doing the high-end information-based aspects of nutrition out there, the one thing they all agree is that the quality of your food is highly dependent on being more whole. And when I say whole, I mean being closer to the actual origin. If it's a plant-based product, being closer to the ground without any processing. The quicker or the least amount of steps it takes to get it from the ground into your mouth, the better. That's a more quality.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm going through like some of our clients here, the precision nutrition process, went through our online platform, and they have a video on there. It's really cool. It kind of talks about where your tomato come from, and that it gives like a variety of foods that we eat on a constant basis, and it talks about the steps that a lot of those foods going from farm to table. And it was like eye-opening to me, like even like the tomatoes and the corn and the different thing. You're like, holy cow.
It's quite astonishing. I think we've all seen the recent documentaries that people have been coming out. What is it? What the Health there's a lot of them out there.
Ink or something.
And although I think that those documentaries tend to be a little bit dogmatic, and we can have again a whole other podcast on those alone. So don't believe everything that you hear, or don't take it into context. But again, the glaringly obvious message is in all of them, and nobody disagrees with the fact that the vast majority of our consumption of our culture's food right now is highly, highly processed with anything and everything, even if it is a fresh vegetable, where it comes from, how far away it comes, and the effect that it has in the overall environment, not just our own context of our body and how it relates to our health, but the gas that it takes, the pollution that it puts off, the processing literally to its core definition, what it takes to get to our plate is incredible.
Well, and I think, it's funny, and we were talking about this earlier, is that the vast majority of us know how to eat well and what eating well or eating with quality looks like. Some more than others for sure. But I think that we've been around it, especially if you're here, you've been around it enough to know realistically what's good and what's bad. Now, it might not be perfect, but why then do we get so caught up in, hey, I'm paleo, or well, I'm gluten-free, or hey, well, I do the ketogenic, or hey, I'm trying this specific. Why do we get so caught up in the minutia when we're kind of forgetting that there's overlying principles that define how to eat with quality and eat well? But I think just like exercise, when we get caught up in doing the things that look sexy, right?
Yeah.
The jumping on the box with the weights of pushing 1,000 pounds, we get caught up in the sexy when we forget that at the end of the day, there is overarching principles that can guide how we eat well and should be sustainable in any environment we're in.
Yes, it starts with the foundation, and you got to be able to master the fundamentals first. And there's certainly some instances, we don't want to disregard the fact that there are individual instances and specifics that exactly what you're putting into your body by way of more macronutrient X versus less macronutrient Y, or specific amounts of vitamins or minerals, or specific foods having to have effects and causes for better or worse health and well-being. And those are very real but unique circumstances, whether it's a controlled disease like diabetes, or it is a deficiency issue like thyroidism, an aspect where certain foods may cause the body to react specifically. We want to pay attention to those, but that's step 2. Step 1 is really mastering the foundation, the fundamentals of being able to understand the basics and understanding how to insert basics into our everyday life consistently.
Yeah, and just like we have exercise principles, I think there is a series of things that people can do to just allow them to eat better. And so with that, I say that in the sense of, to you, like what is something that people can do tomorrow to allow them to eat better?
Well, take a requisite right now. Take a requisite of this is the most simple one we talk about food quality. Take a requisite of how often, what percentage, it could be a roundabout percentage of what you're putting into your mouth, whether that's liquid, solid, or whatever. What percentage of that is packaged? What percentage of that was processed by someone else before getting to you? In other words, are you having to open a package? Are you having to cook it further? Are you having, or process it further? What are you having to do in order for it to get onto your plate and into your mouth? And what percentage is really truly processed in what way? Are you eating more whole foods, meaning that you just can eat it raw? Or are you eating more packaged food, something that's already been processed, cooked for you, to where you have to open a package and then go about your way of whether you're eating it or cooking it any further? That'd be a great requisite start to understand where you are versus where you need to go to take that next step.
And I'm going to kind of direct this in a sort of a specific way, John, just because I feel like I see it a lot, and I want to touch on it because I think you'll have some great insight in that. I think people take nutritional change and make it too difficult. And I think they make it too difficult in the sense that it is hard. When we talk about nutritional change, we talk about behavior change. But I find people get, again, like the most things, they get caught up in the details of like, I gotta count calories, I gotta do this, I gotta post everything into MyFitnessPal, which serves its purpose, and for specific sets of people, it definitely has a purpose to it. But I think we're complicating things too much, and I think the important step to me is what you just mentioned. With that simple step you could take is having the awareness to understand why you are making the decisions you're making through food. And that sounds super complicated, right? To say like, why do I know what I'm eating? But I think and what I've really enjoyed through the precision nutrition process, and that's not a plug in precision nutrition, but it's more of to say that precision nutrition has forced me to become aware, and I have struggles with nutrition as well. It's forced me to become aware of, this is why I'm eating this specific thing. Like, for instance, I've realized my whole life, we've always had dessert after dinner. Yeah. After you ate dinner, there was always something sweet. So I naturally have a tendency, after I eat now, to have something sweet. That's something I've never thought about my entire life until I'd say the last couple months. Right. So based on that, how can people make nutrition change easier? How can you just talked about, checking and looking into like, okay, become aware of this process of what are you actually putting in, but like, what's a step that people can take that's super easy, but you think's going to have the biggest bang for his buck on like, here's one principle, try this now, or one thing that you can do to make yourself more aware that's going to help you tomorrow?
Well, I think that you nailed it with awareness, but I think we need to define the difference between simple and easy. And I think that defining simple, and that would mean that it takes as few steps as possible to complete it. Easy would subjectively assume that we have the skill sets to do something or not. And when I would say that there are a lot of things that we can do that are simple, I don't necessarily think that they're easy for everybody. Mm-hmm. All right, and I totally agree with the awareness piece as being the most important. However, the context of taking the next step, which may be forming a habit or creating even meals or foods on your own that you enjoy, that might be a little bit more of a process. So I know a lot of people, when I worked with some soccer players on some cooking basics, the amount of people that did not have pots and pans, the amount of people that did not know how to cut vegetables, the amount of people that had no idea what spices were and how to utilize them in some basic recipe was astonishing to me, and it really allowed me to take a step back and start with the fundamentals of, okay, I may think it's simple, but it's not easy. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the first step and something simple, I can say that the glaringly obvious thing is that when we put together food, cooking for yourself, okay? That's a simple step, not an easy step, but I think that's going to be the best one that people can do. The more often that we're cooking food for ourselves, the more we know what's inside. That awareness piece is actually there. Therefore, we're more likely to choose better options that are going to get us to our health and happiness goals. Mm-hmm. Within that context, I can say that there are some puzzle pieces of eating that are simple, that once you master, or at least take a step towards mastery, that you can find a lot of variation within that. For instance, a 3-step process to making a meal, okay? A base, and I'm assuming that everybody is an omnivore, not a vegetarian or anything like that here. So creating a base, and I'll do a quick overview of what each of these are. So having a base, having a protein, and maybe that's a vegetarian option for a protein, and then having a sauce. That can go into, and I'll explain that a little bit further as well. But a base can be as something simple as grabbing a handful of lettuce and putting it down on a plate. Okay.
So like the foundation of a house, you're laying the
concrete. We're putting the foundation down. That can be something like lentils, if that's what you like. It can be quinoa. It can be wild rice. It can be something with as little process, the better, with as little processing as possible, but lay that as your foundation, okay? Second thing, throw something on top, a protein, whether that's a baked chicken, whether that's your favorite cut of steak, whether that's, don't be afraid of, let's get out of our mind the type of meat as being good or bad. Let's just focus on the quality, okay? The more organic, the more free range, the less processing. Again, we've saying that word 100 times, and there's a lot of information that we can point you guys to towards finding out what the best options are for these. But whatever you like, let's say it is a steak. Don't be afraid of a fatty cut of steak. Let's just choose a good, clean origin of where that beef is actually coming from. So put a steak on top of that lettuce, all right, and then a sauce. What is it that you like? It could be as simple as just throwing some olive oil on there. Maybe the juice from the steak is enough sauce in itself, and then you leave it at that with some more veggies or whatever you want to put on the plate. Just compiling some simple pieces to make a meal can really be as easy as putting together your favorite, learning your palate, learning your favorite ingredients a little bit better, and mixing and matching those.
So to me, you just nailed an important point without truly saying it. And again, we talk about these all the time, but experiment.
Experimenting, yes.
To me, I can't say it enough, is that this whole journey is a giant experiment. So when you talk about building a base, the protein, I mean, you nailed it. Is that it doesn't so much matter about what it is, but experiment with doing something different than what you're doing now. Because if, and again, there's different groups and subsets, but if you're someone who's not necessarily happy with where you're at right now, or maybe you're satisfied and you want to maintain, just experiment with something new. Because I don't think, and you may disagree, but I don't think if you're going to try something new that you're going to hurt yourself to try it for 1 to 2 weeks. And again, there's specific unique circumstances that people can't try things, but again, I can't preach it enough, is that if you aren't happy, or maybe you want to change, or maybe you want to maintain, or you want to grow, whatever you want to do, experiment with it and try something different, because all you're doing through experimenting is you are creating an awareness for change. You're trying to learn your body more and more and more and understand what works for you, because what works for you, John, does not work for me, nor should it. But at the same time, figure out what does work for you. And if you're trying to say, or if you're going out and you're saying, you know what, these are the things and these are the places I want to go, which is why we've done these destination postcards for our challenges things today. Awesome, I love it, build that. Now experiment. And experiment with different things and take data. And data doesn't mean write all this stuff down and do this. All it means is just observe. And I would challenge that on what you just said. For me, I think one of the biggest things that people can do is, I think naturally, and again, yes, I'm a little bit of generalizing here, but I think naturally we all have a tendency to eat too fast, because we live in this sympathetic state that we talked about last week, where we're always on the go with kids, with phones, and all these things going on, and all these stressors, that we never take the ability to step back, enjoy a meal with the company that we're with, enjoy a meal with the people that surround us, family, and we never take time to sit down and actually enjoy what we're putting into our mouth. And so what I would challenge anyone, if you want an experiment to challenge yourself with, is try to set your utensil down between each meal. Build the base, build the protein, build the sauce that John just mentioned, and eat that with your family, but between each bite, set your fork down. And just notice, what it feels like to actually take your time to eat. And I bet you'll notice that you get full a lot quicker. Now, again, I'm generalizing, but it's simple experiments like that, which I think can make a profound impact. Again, it's not so much on the specifics, but the principles. And to me, one of the first things that you can change right now is eating a little bit slower. And I apologize for going off on on a passionate point right there.
Well, let's move towards closing here and being able to take a step in that direction. So we've mentioned a couple of things. Number one, let's call to action, you guys out there. Take a day, look at your week. Maybe it's a Sunday afternoon, and set aside an hour. It may not take you that time, but give yourself an hour to prepare a simple meal. Okay, make it a family affair, even better. At least get your spouse involved so that you have a cohort in the whole process to take that requisite.
Spouse, kid, friend,
sure.
Whoever you want it to be.
So take Sunday afternoon, build a meal. Foundation, protein, sauce. Maybe that's all you actually do. But try something new within that. Maybe it's a new ingredient. Maybe it's something you never even cooked before. Maybe it's something you never tried before. Try that and take that one step in being a little bit more conscious and concise and aware of what's going into your body, and build out from there.
Yeah, I think again, experiment. If you don't like what's going on right now, try something new. And even if you do like where you're at, try something new, because anything works for a select period of time, but I still think it's important for us to explore new things and to continue to grow, for sure. So, thanks for joining us, PU Talk4. Please, fill us in with questions. Give us feedback. I know some of you are listening. We want to have more conversations, and we ended it with this in the sense before. I should say we were talking before in the sense that all this is hopefully a spark for you for more questions down the road. So we appreciate you guys. Service people, service. We talk all the time. Find a way to give back. Call a friend out, make lunch, meet for lunch, whatever you want to do. But please give us your feedback as well.
Awesome conversations in person, but let's put those on social media. Ask the question online, and let's actually get it out there to everybody else as well.
Thanks, guys.